Pokevlog number 2. After getting started and following all of the early beginner tips that I gave you, here's a few more things to think about that I've observed while playing. It seems that Pokestops love to pop up over historic markers, recreational areas, churches, fire stations, city halls, police stations, places where people like to recreate, such as parks and playgrounds, zoos, museums, and so forth. They don't pop up at all whatsoever in residential areas, and they almost never pop up, but do sometimes pop up in commercial and industrial zones. It's a lot more likely that you'll see a lot of Pokestops at a park, a boardwalk, a local historic site, or some place that draws in a lot of tourists, as opposed to going to your local shopping center. This is also where you'll find a lot more of your Pokemon as well. You'll also notice that some of the more important buildings around your hometown are in fact Pokemon gyms. Places like schools, libraries, churches, fire halls, baseball fields, places that frequently attract young children, is often the kind of place that will have a Poke Gym because they're the ones who play the game most often, and they're the ones who help determine where the gyms will go. Determining where gyms and Pokestops will go is partially on the part of the GPS and partially on the part of the community, who can request one be built by going online and sending in a request. When it comes to Pokemon themselves, I have noticed that in the beginning you find certain Pokemon very commonly, and a few others kind of rarely. As you level up, the types of Pokemon you encounter grow in number, and you start encountering new faces, but still encountering them fairly commonly. Location does play into your Pokemon experience, but you can find Pokemon in locations that you weren't expecting to find them. Once you get up to around about level 7 or 8 or 9 or so, that's when you start having to struggle a little bit with your Pokemon. Where at the lower levels you can just throw a Pokeball and instantly catch things. At the higher levels, a Pokeball alone won't always cut it, and you may start needing to feed them a few berries to pacify them before throwing a Pokeball at them. And then for some of the real hard stuff, you'll probably want to start using the Great Balls and Ultra Balls that you'll get later on in the game. I even hear the Master Balls in this one, but how you would encounter such a thing is something I'm not aware of as of yet. I don't even know how or if you'll be able to capture some of the rarer Pokemon like Zapdos, Articuno, Mewtwo, Porygon, and some of the extinct ones. But I do hear they should all be in the game someplace, even if some of them may require you to go to special events like anime conventions or visit a local Nintendo store. From my experience, often some of the rarest Pokemon you encounter will be Pokemon that you weren't even expecting to encounter. It'll usually be something random that isn't in your rectangle on the bottom of the screen, or something that makes no sense whatsoever for the area you're in. I've also found that if you have to turn the game on and off again, that it may sometimes cause Pokemon to despawn or change their location from when you encountered them last. So if you're seeing a lot of encounters but they're not the type of Pokemon that you want to catch, it helps to sort of turn the game off and back on again, and it might sort of reshuffle the types of Pokemon that you're encountering, although this doesn't always happen. I also have noticed that if you encounter a Pokemon and it tends to run away, or if you encounter several Pokemon and catch one of them, that it'll clear out the rest of the encounters from the screen, and the types of encounters in that area will re-randomize. I've also noticed that there's a couple of completely dead zones in some areas where there'll be no Pokemon encounters whatsoever. I saw this a couple of times while walking on bridges, while walking on obscure back trails in the middle of nowhere, and while taking certain dirt roads. I found that the Pokemon encounter rate dipped down to basically 0, meaning that they seem to tend to prefer hanging around residential areas and recreational areas as opposed to being out where there's basically nothing. I don't know if there's anything to that. I'm still experiencing the game, but that's been my observation on a couple of different occasions. I'm also not completely certain if time of day is a factor in catching Pokemon, but I have noticed more rare encounters during the nighttime than during the daytime. I also hear the nighttime is a perfect time to capture gyms and try to hold on to them because there will be less rivals showing up to take you out during the nighttime than there will be during the daytime. I have a lot yet left to experience about the game, but if you want to really find some good Pokemon, definitely head to your beaches, your boardwalks, your tourist locations, your historic areas, any place where people recreate or gather in large numbers. The more people come to a certain area, the more you're going to have all sorts of crazy Pokestops and lures and other things going on to check out. This vlog and the other one before it are very similar to each other, and I'm sort of saying the same kind of stuff, but sort of giving a little more elaborate information. Future vlogs will be made according to my personal experiences that day. This vlog and the one before it were basically just to catch you up on with some of the stuff that I've been observing while I play the game and what I've learned through doing it. Hopefully these tips will help you when you're just starting out. I don't think there's any real pattern to what you encounter, when you encounter, and where to encounter it, so I can't say like, certain Pokemon always appear in certain geographic locations at certain hours. You do stand a better chance of getting water Pokemon near water and rock Pokemon near rocky areas and stuff like that, but it's not always guaranteed. It does seem more like Pokemon are random and also based on your character's current level. I don't think there is such a thing as a place you always see a Snorlax, for example. And just because a Pokemon is a potential spawn in your area according to the box in the corner doesn't necessarily mean that you'll always encounter it either. So I can't really give tips on how to encounter the specific ones that you want to get. All I can say is that there's certain statistics that seem to play into what you encounter, how you encounter it, when you encounter it, and all of that. No guarantees whatsoever. One thing that I would suggest to you is if you do find a potential encounter spawning in your little Pokemon box, that you should go ahead and just sort of pace around and stay in that area where the silhouette popped up, rather than trying to keep moving in a forward direction, because you might end up walking so far that you'll walk beyond that certain Pokemon's range, and some rarer encounters may not be encountered again for quite a while. I can also assure you that all of your starter Pokemon, the Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur, as well as Pikachu for those of you who want one of those, they do indeed pop up in the wild. So you don't have to worry about who you choose at the beginning, as long as you choose one. The ones that you didn't choose will be possible of being encountered in the wild, so you don't have to worry about choices at the beginning of the game. There can be moments when the game freezes up or glitches or loses the signal, but it's very simple to get around those too. Just turn off your phone and turn it back on, or exit the game and come back. It's really no big deal when that sort of stuff happens. Just pay attention and know that when you exit the screen and come back, the problem will resolve itself. Another thought is the fact that you don't have to get close to the Pokemon and Pokestops. You just have to be near them. You don't have to be directly on top of them to interact with them. Just be around about where they are. So if something is in a dangerous or restricted area, you don't have to walk right on top of it to click on it. You can just sort of stay back from a safe distance. You also don't have to worry about staring at your phone constantly. You can actually play this by not looking at your phone and only glance at it occasionally. The phone will vibrate when you have something to pay attention to, so when you feel that vibration, then stop walking and look down. If you're in a bad area, you can even walk a few feet and still have that encounter encountered, so you don't have to stand in the middle of the street or something catching Pokemon. It's actually safe to continue walking a little distance and stand on the sidewalk. So you don't have to worry too much about distance when it comes to encounters either. I don't know how people are managing to walk off of cliffs and into walls and trip over train tracks and run into traffic and stuff. They should be perfectly alert as they walk and play the game, and have many opportunities to lift their head up, and they should have many opportunities to lift their head up and look away from their phone to see where they're going, so that they don't have accidents. Anyhow, that's about all of the rambling little tips that I can give for now. The next vlogs will happen as I have interesting stories to share, and will be a little bit more story based instead of me just going on about observations and tips. Until that time comes around, thank you for watching and good night.